Hello and welcome. I'm Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I'd like to discuss orbs, Chinese balloons, Tic Tacs, all those objects that have been questioned and considered UAPs in the past couple of years. I'd also like to go on to discuss one of the most amazing cases of abductions. It involves a housewife by the name of Betty Andreasson Luca. So it all started with the Chinese balloon incident, the Chinese spy balloon incident over the United States. Then all of a sudden, these orbs were appearing left and right, Tic Tacs, rounded spheres, all sorts of rounded UAPs, spherical spheres. What are they exactly? Spheres or spheres with a cube inside of them, as Ryan Graves saw, one of the whistleblowers. What could they possibly be? There is a sphere-like drone that you can buy online. It's an interesting drone concept with a 360-degree camera. Looks like a magical floating orb from a sci-fi movie. But it looks nothing like the orbs that I've seen on X or on Reddit, on the videos of these orbs. These have air vents and they have a name brand clearly on them. One of them is named Jupiter. The other one is named Xphero, that is XPHERO. Here's another orb. It's a smoking gun footage recorded by Department of Defense contractor Rick Ybarra above San Diego on September the 10th, 2014. It is the clearest footage of the metallic appearing spherical orb anomalous aerial vehicles, or AAV. But this is a pretty clear picture of what people have been seeing. It's a clear picture of an orb, and pretty sure this is a drone. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. Here's a giant orb that crash landed and was found or captured in Mexico. And this is a very famous object called the Bet Sphere. And this was found after a fire in a forest in northern Texas. So the Bet Sphere is a case of a man finding a silver sphere in the woods after a fire. He brought it home to put it on the mantelpiece as an interesting ornament to look at. Just after a short while, the house started to experience poltergeist activity. Yeah, and the Bet Sphere would actually move of its own accord. Yeah, it freaked the family out. It's a famous case, the Bet Sphere. There's also an Irish ufologist by the name of Patrick Jackson who believes that these orbs are a defense system. Patrick Jackson, who has been studying UFOs for more than 20 years, said he believed unexplained metallic orbs were part of a system that has defended Earth from external threats for possibly thousands of years. Then there's the cube in sphere that Ryan Graves reported during the UAP hearing with the whistleblowers. He was one of the whistleblowers with David Grush, and he reported that he saw cube within a sphere UAP. And now retired Pentagon UFO chief is revealing how the cube and sphere craft works and saying that it is not a UAP. Sean Kirkpatrick, used to be Arrow's chief, has revealed that one of the most famous UFO cases of the modern era, the Navy's baffling cube and sphere, was just a super high-tech drone. U.S. Navy fighter pilots had reported seeing these otherworldly craft near the Atlantic coast between 2014 and 2015. And that was my reference to Ryan Graves and his crew. They saw that off the Virginia coast, I believe. And he was constantly messing with them. And as a result, Ryan Graves went on to organize a organization to help pilots create more safety. And he just had a law passed recently to that effect. So between 2014 and 2015, that was a big problem for pilots, which nearly tore the wing off an FA-18 Super Hornet that was flying with the USS Roosevelt during one incident. That's a picture of Sean Kirkpatrick right there. And this is a picture of what the supposed cube within a sphere looks like up close, but it looks nothing like what we saw on the infrared footage. Yeah, that looks nothing like it. If you guys can see this, it looks more like a balloon. Okay, so this is an article in the Daily Mail by Matthew Phelan. He's the senior science reporter for the dailymail.com. I'm just going to read from the article. The Pentagon's former UFO chief has revealed his conclusion to one of the most famous UFO cases of the modern era. The Navy's baffling cube in a sphere UFO was just a super high-tech drone. U.S. Navy fighter pilots have reported seeing these otherworldly craft near the Atlantic coast between 2014 and 2015, which nearly tore the wing off an FA-18 Super Hornet that was flying with the USS Roosevelt during one incident, as I mentioned before. Now, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, or Dr. Evil, as you're calling him, the Pentagon's recently retired UFO chief, says that the objects were likely next-generation spherical drones that move very accurately. While not confirmed, his description matches a drone prototype made public by Chinese researchers in 2022, a silver orb with 8 thrusters configured at the tips of an internal cube, making it capable of unprecedented mid-air twists and turns. If you guys have a visual, this is what he's saying is what Ryan Graves saw. Doesn't look very much like Ryan Graves' description. What I'm seeing in this visual looks more like a balloon. Granted, it does have LED markers on it, and it looks like it has electronics and a battery at the top and a motion capture camera. So it seems as though Dr. Kirkpatrick is dismissing U.S. Air Force veteran David Grush and Ryan Graves' testimonies as one of several conspiracy-minded whistleblowers on UFOs, disrespecting Grush as he's done in the past. Dr. Kirkpatrick's new comments come ahead of the Pentagon's congressionally mandated historical record report on UFOs due to lawmakers in June of 2024. Dr. Kirkpatrick's government service took him to the Air Force Research Laboratory, the CIA, and a position at America's highly secretive spy satellite agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO, before chasing UFOs. The physicist's Air Force colleagues once nicknamed him Dr. Evil after the laser-obsessed villain in the Austin Powers series of spy film spoofs. One of my going-away presents as I was leaving the National Reconnaissance Office, Dr. Kirkpatrick told CNN national security reporter Peter Bergen, was one of my close colleagues gave me a shark with a laser pointer strapped to its head. Jesus. Dr. Kirkpatrick headed up the Pentagon's then brand new All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARROW, from July the 22nd until the end of December 2023. He was also known, if I may say, as lying and dismissing a lot of whistleblowers that wanted to give testimony, and he just completely ignored them. Last May, Dr. Kirkpatrick briefed NASA's UFO advisory panel that ARROW had logged roughly 800 cases of flying spherical metallic orb UFOs. This is a typical example of the thing that we see most of, Dr. Kirkpatrick told the panel. We see these all over the world, and we see these making very interesting apparent maneuvers. It is unclear just how similar these metallic orbs may be to the UFOs first brought to public attention by former Navy Lieutenant and fighter pilot Ryan Graves, who described them to Congress as a dark gray or black cube inside a clear sphere. Hey, I saw this giant sphere. It had a cube in it. He said, I don't understand it. It must be an alien. Well, actually, no, he said. There's a number of papers out, Dr. Kirkpatrick continued. The most recent one, he said, was from University of Singapore, I believe, where the next generation of drones that are being built are spherical. They've taken about a 2-meter size inflatable and they put a cube inside of it. Dr. Kirkpatrick continued, and everywhere the corner of the cube touches the sphere, they fused it, cut it out, and put little thrusters in. So now I have 8 thrusters and I can put cameras on it and anything else I want, the ex-Aero chief told Bergen. With 8 thrusters in a cube configuration, I can maneuver this drone around very accurately. Scientists with the Singapore University of Technology and Design in China did, in fact, prototype a spherical drone along these lines, dubbed the Spherical Indoor Coanda Effect Drone, is a September 2022 issue of the peer-reviewed Drones. But the Chinese-made drone is not the only novel unmanned spherical craft in production. Swiss-based Flyability has been producing spherical drones since at least 2015, when it won a 1 million competition in the United Arab Emirates. Wow, so there's all sorts of orb or sphere drones out there being produced by a variety of companies, Switzerland as well as China. But they are not the only actors pursuing this kind of aerospace research, according to Aero's departing director. They've tried these all over the place, Dr. Kirkpatrick said. There are a number of advanced technologies that are being commercialized that people don't realize, he said. The office mission is not to prove the existence of extraterrestrials, he said. Well, I thought it was. Well, at least disprove it, but he's saying that it's not the reason for existing, okay? The office's mission, he says, is to minimize technical and intelligence surprise. That is the primary mission. Okay, so that it's more of a military-minded mission that they have then, to minimize technical intelligence surprise. The laser physicists noted that the last February's Chinese spy balloon drama, when multiple objects were tracked and shot down within U.S. and Canadian airspace, could be attributed to Aero's work focusing on anomalous aerial activities in the past. Dr. Kirkpatrick said, in the long list of things that they need to be paying attention to, this one was at the bottom of the list. Huh, okay. Dr. Kirkpatrick's terrestrial approach during his 18-month tenure at Aero has not been without its critics, particularly over his very public disagreements with the UFO whistleblower and fellow NRO veteran De Grush. As I mentioned before, he's practically called David Grush a liar. Dr. Kirkpatrick expanded his own criticism of Grush in his new interview, describing him as someone who had fallen to the influence of UFO true believers within the U.S. military and private sector contractor Bigelow Aerospace, which investigated UFO cases on contract for Pentagon from 2007 to 2012. Dr. Kirkpatrick further dismissed Grush as one of several conspiracy-minded whistleblowers. So he's calling David Grush a conspiracy-minded whistleblower. Okay, adding insult to injury. Grush, a formerly high-ranking U.S. intelligence officer, has accused the U.S. military and its private contractors of illegally hiding evidence of crashed UFOs, recovered beings, and even UFO-related deaths, both under oath to Congress and in the press. I doubt he would put his reputation on the line by giving testimony under oath to Congress and to the press. Well, for their part, these same UFO whistleblowers have accused Dr. Kirkpatrick, in turn, of fostering an atmosphere of disinterest, while others have suggested his superiors are secretly holding back Aero's UFO investigation efforts. Daniel Sheehan, the hard-trained lawyer who represented UFO whistleblower Luis Elizondo in his complaint to the Pentagon Inspector General, said last year, really knowledgeable UFO whistleblowers never did trust Sean Kirkpatrick. There you go, as I was saying before. Very few whistleblowers and knowledgeable people in the UFO community have ever trusted the ex-Aero director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, or AKA Dr. Evil. There's some pictures here of the connectors and the infrared LED markers on the balloon that is included in this article that they're saying is, if you guys have a visual on this, you can see the flight controller right here. Scientists at the Singapore University of Technology and Design, or SUTD, published their findings on this prototype. And this is the spherical drone that Dr. Kirkpatrick is saying is responsible for all the Tic Tac or cube in a sphere sightings. There's a picture of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. This is the footage that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick had originally put out on the Arrow website.
This is essentially all of the data we have associated with this event from some years ago.
So that was Dr. Kirkpatrick's take on the metallic orbs seen all over the world. He's saying that they may likely be the next generation Chinese drones. And I thought I'd end that article with a close-up of the Chinese drone that is on or will be on the market soon. If you guys have a visual on it, you can see that it has propulsion units strategically all the way around. It has motion camera set up and a propulsion device at the top. Just want to share that with a post on X. This is a black glass UFO filmed by a military contractor. And it's a 10-foot sphere that was spotted near El Mirage Airfield in California. And there was no sign of propulsion. There was no noise. It was just sitting there. So you guys be the judge whether you think that this is a Chinese spy balloon or what. But I think this is a pretty good, clear footage of what people have been filming all over the world, these spherical orbs. Well, Dr. Kirkpatrick saying that they're Chinese drones. Why they would be in the El Mirage near an airfield, I don't know, here in the United States. But to me, that doesn't look like the balloon that I just showed. That Dr. Kirkpatrick is saying that the Chinese are putting out as a drone. I don't know. It just doesn't look the same. I don't see, maybe too far away, but I don't see the thrusters. I don't see the control device. This is a little closer. I don't see any appendages. I don't see the camera. Here's Dr. Holland with some very revealing research on what exactly the Chinese balloon might be.
Everything you're about to hear is not classified. Josh and his team have meticulously put together public domain information to reveal a deeply hidden technology. This novel idea is not exclusively American. The so-called Chinese spy balloons demonstrated many of the low visibility, long loitering, and networking capabilities of these new devices. Their research offers an insight into what the Mosul balloon might really be, helping to explain the apparently advanced propulsion witnessed from the Tic Tac. But it goes further. Josh offers his thoughts on why Commander David Fravor, the most senior naval aviator, was apparently selected to have his encounter with this type of UAP, and adds deep new meaning to retiring Arrow administrator Sean Kirkpatrick's statement, most UAP are what he glibly described as balloons. Josh has convinced me of the fact that they are far from simple balloons. He has convinced me that they are a highly funded, multinational network of surveillance drones that can invisibly hover overhead, move through air or water, and demonstrate incredible speeds. So Josh, vacuum balloons? What are they?
Vacuum balloons are a concept that's been around for a while. It essentially is a rigid structure. The two most common shapes are spheres and rounded cylinders. The shell of the object acts as a vacuum chamber, holding a vacuum inside of it that is separated from the external pressure of the atmosphere. The fact that there's a vacuum in it, if the materials are light enough, can cause neutral buoyancy with the atmosphere, and if the materials are actually lighter than air, you can experience lift versus the atmosphere.
What's aerogel?
Aerogel is a material that was actually invented as far back as 1930. It's been developed by NASA through the years. It's also been worked on by the Department of Energy. Aerogel is a puffed material where it's partially empty space and partially silicon-based material for the earliest forms of aerogel.
And how does it work? What would be the characteristics if you let go of a sphere of this alloy aerogel with an evacuated interior? What would it do?
If I make a sphere of aerogel, a shell that has a hollow area on the inside for a vacuum, and draw a vacuum in the aerogel bubble, when I let it go, it'll rise up on its own with no power required, no fuel required, and I believe that this has already been done by the US government. There is a document on the OSTI's public internet that describes spherical shell vacuum vessels that have already been produced by the Department of Energy.
Its buoyancy from sea level to altitude could be controlled by the level of the vacuum. So you could, in fact, have a vertically stable sphere that you could, by altering its pressure, it could hover at exactly the kind of altitudes. And maybe I'm intrigued to know what kind of speed it would change. How fast it would accelerate between these loitering at. It's mind-blowing, and yeah, of course, you could use it as a long-duration drone if it could also contain some lightweight electronics. Do you think people are working on that?
I can prove that people are working on this. The research papers are documented on public websites. We've backed them up to archive servers. I work with a research group known as Korea UFO. We've done a lot of this research together, and we've found the patents that describe the parts of these craft. We have a reasonable understanding of how those patents work together to form the spherical drones that are currently seen in the air around the world.
That are currently seen in the air. Oh, you're teasing me. Oh, that's fantastic. And no doubt this patent, if it's published, or the physics or the material science of the concept isn't necessarily just NATO or the United States. It's probably international. I can well imagine China, who has a long history of working with lighter than aircraft, would be interested in aerogel vacuum balloons.
Yeah, we have proof that we've found that shows that China started their aerogels research program in 2011. The research paper that was released by China also contained a link to the funding of the research, which showed that China initiated their R&D project on aerogel in 2011. Curiously, 2011 is also the year that Aerogel Technologies in the United States released their public information about their advances in aerogels and airways. I believe that we fully understand what is going on now.
Oh, you've just opened a very interesting can of worms there, Josh. So you're saying that possibly some so-called UFO, UAP sightings could be a currently semi-secret or very funded and interesting technology into aerogel vacuum balloons. What would a military or a nation use a lighter than air vacuum aerogel sphere for? I mean, what would be its application?
I believe that the spheres are being used as recon drones right now. They require no power and no fuel and can indefinitely stay suspended in the air column at neutral buoyancy. You can attach a camera to the outside of the sphere. I believe there's actually 6 cameras, one pointing up, one pointing down, pointing out in each of the 4 directions. That would give you full visual coverage from that single drone. We've also found patents for a mesh network of drones that communicate between themselves. So I believe multiple spherical recon drones are able to form a visual network over a wide area by being left to disperse in the air column, spread themselves out as a mesh, and form a full surveillance. I believe that these are the
Nighttime
sphere
storage,
in
right.
a cube that are being seen by Ryan Graves, who testified to Congress about this exact issue.
Right.
Ryan Graves.
So
That's
we've
right.
definitely had reports in Congress specifically talking about spheres inside cubes. And also we've had the Mosul sphere, which exactly fits what you're just saying. And very strangely, we've had Commander Fravor seeing a Tic Tac. Now, Tic Tac is exactly the other shape that you described, which would be like a pressurized tank, a lozenge shape. Did that demonstrate some of the maneuvering capabilities of a vacuum aerogel balloon?
I believe that the large spheres seen near Eglin Air Force Base and reported to Matt Gates were also advancements of this technology, a scaling up of the small spheres to a bigger sphere that could then fly in a diamond pattern with 4 other piloted AI drones.
Oh, right. So this network idea. But going back to the so-called Tic Tac sighting off the coast of San Diego in the Pacific, that's quite a while ago now. So could that have existed? Could that be a vacuum aerogel balloon device, not a sphere, but a Tic Tac shape, going back to the date that Fravor saw it?
If you have the sphere, you then scale up to the rounded cylinder. I believe what they actually did is build the Tic Tac in a large gas pressure vessel, similar to a propane tank that you would see at a gas station where you would fill up your smaller barbecue tank.
Right.
They would fill that with aerogel precursors, build a Tic Tac inside of the large propane vessel, and then equip it with pumps, with intakes, with exhausts, with electronics, such that it could be turned into a vacuum drone as well. I believe this technology was, again, as I said, done by Triad National Services LLC, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and the Department of Energy. I believe that when they made this advancement in the technology from spheres to the Tic Tac, they decided that they needed to do a test of it. They then looked for the best conventional pilot within the U.S. Armed Forces, which at the time would have been Commander David Fravor.
Absolutely.
And unbeknownst to Commander Fravor, I believe that Triad, the DOE, and LANL set up a test to see if the best conventional pilot would be able to see this new Tic Tac shaped drone. When Commander Fravor saw it and asked for tasking to go and investigate, he went down towards the drone. They realized that he was able to see it, vented the pressure from the internal tank, and it would have incredibly shot up in the atmosphere so fast that it would be there 1 second and gone the next second up into the air, so fast that neither he nor the other pilot, Dietrich, would have been able to see it.
So it fits the whole description where Commander Fravor says that it behaved in a way that didn't fit with any technology that he knew about, because he didn't know about it. And I've often
None of us did.
Right, it was pretty secret. And hang on, they're testing it in a military operational advanced weapon area. And as you say, Fravor actually trains the best Navy pilots. I'd never thought of it. Why wasn't it some junior pilot with an F-18? Commander Fravor's the creme of la creme of pilots. So you think it was actually a test, and so to see how he would react to it, how psychologically he would react to it, and so you believe that his reports of what he saw are accurate.
Yeah, I believe that his testimony, both on his original Joe Rogan podcast and his testimony to Congress, are consistent. I believe that they're also consistent with the craft that I'm describing. We've released diagrams. We've released a document on our Twitter feed that describes these craft in detail. It links to the patents. It shows where the budgeting came from. I believe that we've answered this question. It is not aliens.
Going back to the practicality of how it works, because I think if we could nail it actually being a physical object. So I can see it loitering at any altitude with differential pressure. I can also imagine, but I would want to kind of see it and look at some physics of how it would accelerate vertically. But how on earth does it move laterally? Does it have any kind of lateral propulsion? And some of the sightings that David Fravor and others have said on the Tic Tac shaped object was they look like antenna or protrusions coming from one side of it, maybe on the base. Do you know anything about them?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, going up and down is a relatively easy matter, changing the internal pressure of the vacuum chamber versus the outside pressure of the atmosphere or the water. These craft can actually enter the water and suck water into their vacuum chamber and expel water to rise in water and in air as well. I believe that how they move in directions other than up and down is by sucking air into an air intake with a pump and then expelling the air through a vector thrust pump.
The two nozzles.
I believe there's even an example of this. There is a 2014 video that was released by Leslie Kane. It shows a Chilean helicopter encountering an unknown object that was hovering. The object was not visible to the visual spectrum, but did show up to their infrared camera on their helicopter. The object in question expels a plume of dark material behind it, which I believe to be colder than air gas that was inside of it before.
It's a FLIR image,
gas, Yeah, after expelling the gas on the FLIR, as described by physics, the craft starts to move forwards.
So why aren't we visually, as members of the public all over the world, seeing these network of drone spheres everywhere? How on earth could you mask their visual signatures? They'd be quite obvious, wouldn't they?
I believe these are relatively scarce still in number. I don't think that we've made a whole ton of these. I think they're using the same ones over and over. They would be used in the most important areas for them to be used. If there was a training zone and you deployed a bunch of spheres in a mesh recon network, they would allow an operator back at the base to use a VR headset to have a real-time view of what is going on in that training area so that they can evaluate pilot performance, etc. The final thing is we actually found a patent that claims the craft are coated with a photon-absorbing layer of black silicon. I leave this up to your viewers to determine if they believe that based on the patents, but the patent exists and is consistent with drones that have been seen.
Well, I can help on that because in Imperial College in London, this person has invented a metamaterial. Metamaterial is a material that interferes with different frequencies. An early metamaterial would be rubber that's coated around submarines that can absorb sonar sound. A more sophisticated metamaterial can absorb microwave energy, the stealth skin of stealth airplanes. It's almost like an aerogel. Early stealth fighters had to be babied. Today, the metamaterial has quantum leaped into optical frequencies. So if you can make a metamaterial that actually, it doesn't absorb, that's the most important thing to know, it redirects. So if light, photons go into a material, into a maze of convoluted, faceted, just the right frequency stuff, it doesn't come back out again. There's no reflection. So yeah, tanks are being coated in it. It obviously works better at night, because if it's absorbing all light and not reflecting it, it appears black. Although I think you can probably change the color. But imagine if you had a light absorbing skin on a drone in the air against a dark background, it's gone.
Yeah, there's not many photons at light, and as you said, when those not many photons are scattered, that's even less of the object that you can see.
You could pop these out of submarines, like bloop, and it just goes up, and all you need to do is place them in maybe a few kilometer distance and make, as you say, a network over a battlefield, over an area of surveillance, and you can get rid of them as well. Boom, they've gone. They would make long loitering, invisible, networked surveillance drones. And the other thing that I've discovered is one of the weakest links of drones that a lot of people have worked on with encrypted radio signals is sending the signal from the drone back down to Earth to a ground station. Forget that. That doesn't happen anymore. The signal goes up. So all these signals are being picked up by a satellite network, which then collects synthetic aperture radar stuff and then can send it down as a single encrypted beam. So it stops anybody eavesdropping on what the drones have no RF signature from the ground because it's all going up. Have you seen anything about data transmission from these types of drones?
It's exactly as you described. There is a patent for this procedure that is assigned to Los Alamos National Laboratory, the same place that has been making these drones. It describes a mesh network of several space-based or atmosphere-based drones that are used together to interconnect. They communicate with each other, and they can also send signals, as you described, up to a satellite. I believe that this is also being used as a lie to the general public. And I believe that it goes back quite a while too. We've been tracing this backwards in its chronology, that they didn't just start with a spherical drone. The aerogel came from somewhere, and it looks like it goes back as far as 1930. And that was a man named Kistler in 1930. And curiously, that's the same year that Einstein and Szilard invented a refrigeration device that required no moving parts. I believe that if you take a refrigerating device that has no moving parts and apply that to a pump that contains aerogel on the inside, you can actually form a vacuum pump with no moving parts that requires minimal power. Simply heating up the aerogel will cause air to be drawn into the pump.
Yeah, you've got that immense, you're using natural resources of air pressure with exotic material to actually make something work without burning oil. It's what a fantastic idea. So do you think aerogel has other potential uses? Obviously, it seems to be funded and in the domain of militaries throughout the world. But do you see this aerogel vacuum balloon or containment of differential pressure as being beneficial outside of the military?
I've put forth an idea on our Korea UFO public Twitter that actually describes a method of turning this technology into energy. And I understand that this is going to sound like an extraordinary claim, but I believe that this technology leads to free energy, and I would like scientists and the public to challenge what I'm saying. I want this to push forwards so that it's not hidden and sequestered within a secret part of the government.
So there you have it. Tic Tac definitely explained the Chinese balloons and the orbs as well. That was Joshua Bertrand, by the way, the scientist that was giving all the detailed, and that was Professor Holland and his show. And they spoke about the spherical drones that are currently being seen all over the place. There's a substance that Joshua talks about called aerogel, along with lightweight electronics, is placed in these orbs or spheres, and a vacuum is created, or a vacuum chamber is created. And this is something that China initiated back in 2011. They were doing R&D, research and development on it. Aerogel was publicized, by the way, in the United States in 2011. And aerogel is something that was invented by someone called Kistler in 1930. There's several patents that Joshua shows on the screen there, proving that this device is in existence, and that this pretty much explains Patrick Jackson, the Irish UFOs theory, that they are drones and that they are communicating with each other and that they can communicate with a satellite as well. You get any number of them, they create a network, and you can get full visibility of any area. Excellent for spying, in other words. This is the same exact thing that Commander Fravor saw, and the theory that Joshua Bertrand explains there is that the military or group that has this technology, the aerogel drone, they selected Commander Fravor because he was the best conventional test pilot, and they wanted to see if he could see the Tic Tac drone and how he would react to it. The drone operates on a differential pressure, so when the vacuum chamber is released, it'll go straight up in incredible speeds or down. And there's also an intake of air, and it expels air as well to go horizontally. They also happen to explain the very famous Chilean helicopter incident that oftentimes is seen on Ancient Aliens, where you see a UFO or UAP with a plume of dark material being expelled in the back. So Joshua was saying that this simply is the differential pressure, or the air being expelled out the back of this drone, is what these Chilean pilots observed. And he also explained that this drone is piloted by a VR headset. Most importantly, he explained that this technology could probably be used for free energy. And Joshua Bertrand, at the end, challenges anybody to disprove his theory or to add to it. He also explained that what he's doing is not illegal. None of this information is classified, and that the science can be found anywhere on the internet. So I thought that was a very good scientific explanation to the UAPs that are in the shape of orbs or spheres or Tic Tacs, or even an explanation for the Mosul orb. I'd like to move on now and talk about Betty Andreasson Luca. And I'll be reading from an online article by Vicky Verma, who's an outstanding UFO investigator and author, from the How and Why's online magazine. And this article is titled Betty Andreasson's Multiple UFO Experiences Underwater, Base, and Humans in Glass Container. And I promise you folks, if you're not already aware of Betty Andreasson, this is really a fascinating case of abduction. So the abduction of Betty Andreasson Luca is considered to be one of the most documented cases in the history of ufology. The woman from Massachusetts experienced multiple abductions, and her case is widely studied by UFO researchers. It became popular after the publication of the best-selling novel, The Andreasson Affair, which came out in the late 1970s. She attended many radio shows and TV interviews where she discussed her encounter with gray aliens and even drew sketches of the incident. Betty Andreasson was born on January the 7th, 1937, to Wayno and Eva Aho. She went to school in Westminster and Gardner, Massachusetts, and had a great interest in art since childhood, which later became her passion. Betty married twice, and with her first husband, she gave birth to 7 children. She met her second husband, Bob Luca, in 1977. And for those of you that have a visual on this is a picture of Betty Andreasson Luca. According to the official reports, on the evening of January the 25th, 1967, Betty was at home with her 7 children and parents around 6:30 p.m. She was busy in the kitchen when the lights in the house started blinking strangely. Soon after, the kitchen window was hit by a reddish light, and the whole house went out of electricity. The children got terrified with the scene, and Betty tried to calm them down. Her father looked out to find the source of the light and saw 5 strange-looking humanoid creatures walking right towards the house. Before he could understand the situation, the beings walked inside the house through the door, which put the whole family in a state of shock. This is a picture of Betty Andreasson, if you guys have a visual on this, being hypnotically regressed by Dr. Hynek. One creature went to Betty's father, while the other 4 came to her. And one of them started talking with her telepathically. The one who made telepathic contact with Betty was about 5 feet tall, while others were shorter than him. The description by witnesses was similar to the modern illustration of gray aliens. They had only slits on their mouth, 3 fingers in one hand, and wore a blue-colored one-piece suit. Betty was frightened, but at the same time she felt calm by the friendly nature of the beings. They did not harm any member of the family, and even released her daughter from a state of unawareness. Then she was taken outside and boarded on their saucer-shaped craft with a small dome that was standing in the backyard. After that, the ship went up in the air and merged with the mothership, where Betty went through medical tests and was under the effects of strange equipment. Later, she was taken to some strange place where she felt much pain. According to her, it was a spiritual experience. And again, if you guys have a visual on this, Betty has provided a sketch of 2 of the saucers. They pretty much look like your typical saucers. They have 3 orbs at the bottom, which I have heard before are used for propulsion. Later that night, Betty returned home at 10:40 p.m. and found her family still in a frozen state, where one of the aliens was watching them in her absence. Then the family was put to bed by the beings, and the aliens left. What's more, she forgot about her abduction until undergoing hypnotherapy in later years. Betty said in some of her interviews that the creatures were angelic in nature, but not biblical. I'm not sure what that means. Perhaps they didn't have wings and didn't look like your typical Bible-type portrayal of angels. She is a religious person, had only some school education, and did not understand much about UFOs. Only after this bizarre experience, she understood that whatever she had experienced that night was much like a UFO abduction. Okay, so she had no prior interest or knowledge of UFOs before this happened to her. In 1975, Dr. Alan J. Hynek posted an ad in the paper to learn more about the abduction experiences and asked help from common people. Betty answered his ad by sending a letter, but it was rejected due to its unusual details. It was only in 1977 when her case was deeply investigated by the experts, including a solar physicist, an electronics engineer, an aerospace engineer, a telecommunications specialist, and a UFO investigator. How about that? Had no idea. Her case was actually investigated by a physicist, an engineer, and an aerospace engineer. Her case was first investigated by Jules Vaillancourt, a mutual UFO network investigator in 1977. He said, quote, "What I found most amazing about Betty was her ability to draw. The detail of the spacecraft and the beings she drew under hypnosis were such that it really made me believe there was something to this," end quote. He also added that the detective who had given a psychological stress evaluation to Betty and her daughter believed her story. She even spoke the language of the aliens under hypnosis. I would have liked to have heard that. Her case investigation continued for 12 months, where she and her daughter had gone through hypnosis sessions, lie detector tests, and a psychiatric interview. Both mother and daughter passed them with a genuine reaction. Author and UFO researcher Raymond E. Fowler wrote 5 books on her UFO experiences that include the famous Andreasson Affair series. During one of her hypnotic regression sessions, she remembered one of the early abductions that occurred to her in childhood. It took place in 1950 when she was taken from her home into a spacecraft as usual. But this time, the craft was flying toward an ocean or sea. She was terrified that the craft would crash into the water, but the ship submerged into the water and entered into a kind of tunnel. Betty could see everything underwater, as the place was filled with light. What she said next under hypnosis is so bizarre that it even gave a chill to Fowler, the author. She saw people from all eras, different races, encased in the glass containers. Fowler called it, quote, the Museum of Time, end quote. Betty said that people in the containers were in old-fashioned clothes and that there were uncountable cubicles with humans inside at that underwater base. If you guys have a visual, she sketched what she saw, and it's a series of people, one that looks like Jesus Christ, another Asian person, another Native American, all within glass cubicles. Fowler wrote that when he listened to her, one of the regression session recordings, his mind blew up as he found it difficult to believe, quote, "A cold chill coursed through my body when Betty was describing people and animals enclosed in glassy cubicles in an icy cavern." If you guys have a visual on this, here's a picture of Betty Andreasson and her second husband, Bob Luca. Betty traveled a lot across the country, attending numerous TV interviews and radio shows, and lecturing about her UFO experiences. She and her husband, Bob Luca, had been unsettled for many years until 1995 when they moved to Virginia. They lived in Virginia for 5 years and then moved to Florida. She died on March the 18th, 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I would have loved to have hashed that out more. That's just a taste of Betty Andreasson Luca and her amazing story. I also hope that you enjoyed my debunking of the Tic Tac orbs or spherical spheres that have been seen and called UAPs all over the place. Sean Kirkpatrick's take on it. But I think that Professor Holland and Joshua Bertrand had a pretty good take on what's going on, and they have proof as well. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please keep searching for the truth. Please pray and cast a protective shield for the children of Gaza and the Ukraine. They're lonely and afraid. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my podcast. My website is ufo-disclosure.com. My Instagram is UFO Disclosure Podcast. And my Twitter is UFO Disclosure with an underscore at the end. And if you want to check out my YouTube channel, it is at UFO Disclosure dash B as in Bravo, R as in Romeo, 3YY. Thank you. Thanks again for listening to my podcast.